Sir, the complaint clearly states the grass exceeds the allowable height.
I haven't had time. My wife is ill. This is ridiculous.
I understand, but the ordinance is clear. You have 24 hours.
This isn't right. We've lived here for 20 years. How can they just evict us like this?
I don't care what you think the rules are. You have exactly 24 hours to remove that structure, or we will have it removed and bill you accordingly. You can't ignore these bills any longer. You have to pay the outstanding balance now.
I'm trying. I need to check the account. I thought I paid it. We need to tell them what really happened. They aren't going to believe us.
Just calm down. You're making it worse.
Sir, I need you to step away from the door.
I didn't move into this neighborhood looking for drama. I moved in because I wanted peace. I had just come out of a rough year. Work stress, family stuff, the kind of life phase where you just want quiet evenings and predictable days. The house wasn't fancy, single story, small yard, but it felt like mine. The HOA was part of the deal. I knew that going in. I'd lived under one before. As long as you follow basic rules and pay your dues, they usually leave you alone. That's what I thought. The first few months were normal. I paid my HOA fees through autopay. Same day, every month. Same confirmation email, every time. I kept those emails. Not because I was paranoid, just because that's how I am. The HOA emails were boring. Reminders about trash cans. A notice about repainting fences. Holiday decoration rules. Nothing alarming. Then one day, I saw her. She was standing near the mailbox cluster, holding a clipboard, walking slowly, looking at houses like she was inspecting them. She smiled when she saw me. "Hi," she said. "I'm Linda. I'm on the HOA board." She said it proudly, like a badge. I said hi back. Didn't think much of it. She asked how long I'd lived here, if I liked the neighborhood, if everything was to standard. That phrase stuck with me. To standard. I laughed it off, said everything was fine. She nodded, but she kept looking at my house, my lawn, my driveway, my trash cans. That was the first time I felt something was off. Not danger, just attention. After that, I started noticing her everywhere. Walking the street early in the morning, driving slowly past houses, stopping, writing things down. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then the emails started. A friendly reminder about trash cans being visible too long after pickup. That one was fair. I adjusted. Then another email. My lawn edging wasn't consistent. I fixed it. Then another. My car had been parked in the driveway for extended periods. That one annoyed me. It was my driveway, but I didn't reply. I didn't want problems. I believed in staying quiet and compliant. HOAs feed on reactions. A few weeks later, I got a notice on my door. Not an email. A printed notice. Potential violation observed. No name. No time. Just a vague sentence. That's when I realized this wasn't random. Someone was watching. I emailed the HOA office asking for clarification. They replied 2 days later. Board member Linda observed the issue. There it was. A name. After that, everything changed. Linda stopped smiling. When she saw me outside, she'd stare. Not angry. Not yelling. Just cold. Like she was waiting. I started feeling uncomfortable in my own yard. I'd second guess where I parked. How long my trash can stayed out. Whether a leaf on my lawn looked wrong. It sounds small, but wears on you. One evening, she knocked on my door. I opened it. She stood there with her clipboard again. "I just wanted to discuss some concerns," she said. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't smile. She listed things. Small things. Technical things. I told her I was following the rules. She tilted her head. "Well," she said, "we'll see." That sentence bothered me more than yelling would have. After that, the notices came faster. Emails, door tags, certified letters. Always polite, always vague, always from her. I started keeping a folder. Screenshots, emails, photos of my yard after I fixed things. I didn't know why yet. Just instinct. Then one afternoon, I got an email that made my chest tighten. Outstanding balance notice. It said I owed money to the HOA. Late fees. Accumulated dues. It didn't make sense. I checked my bank. Payments were there. I replied immediately. Attached proof. No response. A week later, another notice arrived. This one was firmer. Failure to resolve outstanding balance may result in further action. That phrase sat heavy. I called the HOA office. No answer. Left a voicemail. Still nothing. Then Linda showed up again. This time, she didn't knock. She stood at the edge of my driveway while I was unloading groceries. "You need to take care of your unpaid bills," she said. I told her I had paid. She smiled. "That's not what our records show." I asked to see the records. She said I'd get them soon. She turned and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying things in my head, wondering if there had been a mistake, a glitch, a double charge reversed. But deep down, I felt something darker. This wasn't about money. This was about control. Over the next few weeks, neighbors stopped talking to me as much. Nothing obvious, just shorter conversations, less eye contact. Someone had been talking. One morning, I found a note taped to my door. "Please resolve your HOA issues." No signature. I felt embarrassed and angry. I emailed the board again. Firm this time. I demanded a full ledger. Itemized charges. 2 days later, I got a response. From Linda. She said the board would review my tone. That was the moment I realized something important. She wasn't trying to fix a problem. She was trying to create one. And whatever she was planning next was going to be bigger than emails and door notices. I didn't know it yet, but she was already laying the groundwork. Paper trails, accusations, narratives, and I was about to learn just how far an HOA Karen will go when she decides you're her target. After that email from Linda about my tone, I stopped expecting fairness. Something had shifted. Before, it felt like petty enforcement. Now it felt intentional. The next notice arrived 3 days later. Certified mail. That alone made my stomach drop. Inside was a letter titled "Final Reminder Before Escalation." Those words were bolded. It claimed I was behind on HOA dues for 3 months. It listed late fees, administrative fees, a compliance review charge. The total was more than I paid in a year. I sat at my kitchen table reading it again and again. I knew I had paid. I had proof. But the letter didn't care about proof. It cared about pressure. I logged in my bank account and printed everything. Every transaction. Dates. Amounts. Confirmation numbers. I emailed the HOA office again. Attached everything. This time, I copied every board member listed on their website. I kept it calm. Professional. Polite. I asked for a meeting. I asked for the ledger. I asked for clarification. 2 days passed. No reply. On the third day, a neighbor named Mark stopped me while I was taking out trash. He looked uncomfortable. "Hey," he said quietly. "Just wanted to check in." I asked him what he meant. He hesitated. "People are saying you're in trouble with the HOA," he said. Something about unpaid bills. There it was. The story had started spreading. I told him it wasn't true, that there was a mistake. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about how fast reputations change, how quickly a rumor becomes a fact once it's repeated enough. A few days later, Linda knocked on my door again. This time, she wasn't alone. Another board member stood with her. Quiet, arms crossed. Linda spoke. "We've given you multiple chances to resolve this," she said. I asked her again for the records. She sighed, like I was being difficult. "You can request them formally," she said. "In writing." I reminded her I already had. She smiled. "We'll review it." Then she leaned in slightly. "Just so you know," she said, lowering her voice, "failure to pay can have serious consequences." I asked what she meant. She straightened up. "Liens, legal action, police involvement." Police. That word stuck in my head long after they left. I started documenting everything more carefully. Dates, times, who said what. I took photos of my yard every morning. Saved emails in multiple places. It felt ridiculous, but also necessary. A week later, I received a notice about a special compliance hearing. Mandatory attendance. No option to reschedule. The meeting was held in a small room at the community center. Plastic chairs, folding table, fluorescent lights. Linda sat at the center. 2 other board members beside her. They looked bored. She opened the meeting by reading a list of violations. Some were old, some were vague. One was completely made up. Then she moved to the unpaid bills. I slid my documents across the table. She barely glanced at them. "These don't match our records," she said. I asked to see theirs. She said they weren't available at the moment. I felt my patience slipping. I asked how it was possible that my payments showed as complete, but their ledger didn't. She said sometimes payments don't apply correctly. I asked how that happened. She said it wasn't her job to explain. The meeting ended with a warning. Resolve the balance within 10 days, she said, or further action will be taken. No vote, no discussion, just a decision. Walking out of that room, I felt something I hadn't expected. Fear. Not panic, but a quiet, heavy fear. Because I realized something important. The HOA wasn't a neutral system. It was people, and people with power don't always play fair. Over the next week, the tension seeped into everything. I checked my phone constantly. Every email notification made my heart race. I started avoiding neighbors. I hated that. This was my home. Then came the envelope that changed everything. Another certified letter. This one mentioned potential law enforcement involvement due to refusal to comply. That sentence felt unreal. I called the HOA office again. This time, someone answered. A receptionist. She sounded nervous. I asked her directly if police were being contacted. She paused. I'm not authorized to discuss that, she said. I asked who was. She said Linda. I hung up and sat there in silence. I thought about how easily this could spiral. How someone could twist paperwork into a story. Unpaid bills. Refusal to comply. Hostile homeowner. I wasn't that person. But paperwork doesn't show intent. It shows narratives. I decided to do something I should have done earlier. I requested the full HOA financial records under state law. Formal letter. Certified mail. They had a deadline to respond. A few days later, Linda emailed me. Short. Cold. She said my request was being reviewed. Then she added something that made my skin crawl. Until this matter is resolved, she wrote, please refrain from contacting board members individually. That was it. They were closing ranks. I felt boxed in. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again. Same place as before. Same stack of papers. But now, the feeling was different. This wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. This was about my credibility, my peace, my safety. And somewhere deep down, I started to suspect something else. Something didn't add up. The numbers, the missing records, the way Linda avoided specifics. It felt less like incompetence and more like covering something up. I didn't know what yet, but I knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to stop. And whatever she was planning next was going to force a confrontation I couldn't avoid. The first sign that things were about to get worse came from a place I didn't expect. My job. I work from home most days. Quiet setup. Laptop. Phone. No drama. One afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'm glad I did. It was a woman from the HOA's management company. Her voice was careful, measured. She said she was calling to confirm my refusal to pay outstanding balances. That wording hit me like a punch. I told her I had never refused to pay anything. I told her I had paid everything. She paused. Then she said something that made my heart race. Our records show continued noncompliance, she said. And the board has classified this as a willful issue. Willful. That word changes everything. Mistakes can be fixed. Willful behavior gets punished. I asked her who made that classification. She didn't say the name. She didn't have to. After that call, I couldn't focus. I stared at my screen, rereading emails that now felt threatening instead of annoying. That evening, I checked my mailbox and found another envelope. Not certified this time, just slipped in. Inside was a notice titled, Intent to Escalate. It mentioned collections, legal action, and again, police involvement. I sat in my car, holding that paper longer than I want to admit. I felt small, powerless, and angry in a quiet way that scared me more than yelling ever would. The next day, a neighbor I barely knew knocked on my door. She looked awkward. I hope this isn't weird, she said. But the board sent out an email. My stomach dropped. What email? I asked. She hesitated. They said there's a homeowner who's refusing to pay dues, she said, and that it might affect community services. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. I asked if the email mentioned police. She nodded. That was the moment I realized the story was out. Not just to the board, not just to management, to the whole neighborhood. I opened my laptop and checked my inbox. There it was. A community-wide message. Carefully worded. No name mentioned, but clear enough. An unresolved compliance issue involving unpaid HOA fees. Potential legal and law enforcement escalation. Community impact. I felt sick. I hadn't done anything wrong, but the narrative had been set. That day, things felt different outside. People watched more, talked less. I caught snippets of conversation when I walked by, probably ignoring the rules. HOA doesn't do this unless it's serious. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stayed quiet. That night, I called a friend and told them everything. They listened. Then they said something that stuck with me. This sounds less like a mistake, they said, and more like someone protecting themselves. That sentence lit a fuse in my brain. I went back through every document again, not just mine. I looked at HOA notices, formatting, language, patterns. That's when I noticed something strange. The unpaid balances listed in my letters didn't match standard dues amounts. The late fees were inconsistent. The dates didn't align with payment cycles. It looked sloppy or rushed, like someone was trying to fill gaps. I checked public records. HOA financial summaries were posted annually. I compared them. That's when I saw it. A discrepancy. Small, but real. There was a shortfall in collected dues from the previous quarter. It wasn't labeled, just missing. And suddenly, a thought crossed my mind that made my chest tighten. What if someone else hadn't paid? What if the board needed a cover? The next morning, Linda knocked on my door again. This time, she didn't bring a clipboard. She brought confidence. "We need this resolved," she said. "You're causing unnecessary stress for the community." I asked her why the numbers didn't match. Her eyes flicked away for just a second. She said accounting errors happen. I asked why my name was being used in a public email. She said it wasn't personal. Then she said something that chilled me. "If you continue to resist," she said calmly, "we'll have no choice but to involve authorities." I asked her directly if she had contacted the police. She smiled. "Not yet." That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I kept imagining scenarios. A knock at the door. Questions I wasn't prepared for. Being treated like a criminal over paperwork. I started preparing for the worst. I printed everything, organized it into folders. I wrote a timeline. I even recorded a video explaining everything, just in case. 2 days later, I received an email from the HOA management company. Short, formal. They said a welfare and compliance check had been requested. My hand shook reading that line. That's when fear turned into resolve. I wasn't going to let this spiral quietly. I contacted a local legal aid office. I didn't hire anyone yet. Just ask questions. They told me something important. HOAs can't send police for unpaid dues. Unless they lie. That sentence echoed in my head. Lie. That same evening, Linda sent me another email. This one was different. Less formal. More emotional. She said my refusal to cooperate was forcing her hand. She said she was concerned for the community. She said she hoped I'd do the right thing before things escalated further. It read less like an HOA message and more like a threat. I replied once. One sentence. "I have paid every due. I have proof. Please stop." She didn't respond. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. A calm male voice. "This is Officer Daniels," he said. "Please call me back regarding a report filed by your HOA." My stomach dropped. The thing Linda had been hinting at. The thing she'd been threatening. It was happening, and I had no idea what story she had told them. I stared at my phone for a long time before calling the number back. My first instinct was to ignore it. Pretend I hadn't heard the voicemail. Buy myself time. But I knew that was a bad idea. So I stepped outside, sat on my porch, and called the officer back. He answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, professional. He said the HOA had contacted the department regarding a non-compliant resident and concerns about an escalating dispute. I asked him directly what that meant. He paused. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. They're alleging refusal to pay required dues and aggressive behavior when contacted. Aggressive. That word hit harder than unpaid. I told him calmly that none of that was true, that I had proof of payment, that I had emails showing repeated attempts to resolve the issue. He listened. Then he said he needed to stop by for a brief visit, just to clear things up. He said it like it was routine, but nothing about this felt routine. I spent the next hour pacing. I laid out every document on my dining table. Bank statements, HOA emails, certified letters, my written timeline. I tried to stay calm, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. When a knock came, it wasn't loud, just firm. 2 officers stood on my porch. Behind them, across the street, I saw Linda. She wasn't hiding. She stood there with her arms crossed, watching. That image is burned into my memory. The officers introduced themselves and asked if they could come in. I said yes. Inside, they explained why they were there. The HOA had reported ongoing refusal to pay dues. They said there were concerns about escalating hostility. They said they were asked to document the situation. I asked them what exactly had been reported. One officer glanced at the other. Then he said the HOA claimed I had been confrontational and uncooperative. I felt my jaw tighten. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't interrupt. I just handed them the folder. I told them to take their time. They sat at my table and went through everything. Slowly, carefully. I watched their expressions change. Not dramatically, just subtle shifts. Eyebrows lifting. Pauses. One officer asked me how long I'd lived there. Another asked about my interactions with the board. I answered honestly. I told them I'd never missed a payment. I told them I'd asked repeatedly for the ledger. I told them I felt targeted. Then one of them asked a question I hadn't expected. "Do you know why they do this?" he asked. I said I didn't. But inside, I had a theory. After about 20 minutes, they closed the folder. One officer sighed quietly. He said, "From what we can see, this looks like a civil matter." He said there was no basis for police involvement. I felt my shoulders drop for the first time in days. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "But we do need to speak with the HOA representative who filed the report." I watched them step outside. I stayed inside. Through the window, I saw them walk toward Linda. She straightened up. Her confidence was gone. They talked for a few minutes. I couldn't hear what was said, but I could see her gestures change. Less pointing, more explaining. Then I saw one officer pull out a notebook. He wrote something down. Linda's face went pale. After a while, the officers came back inside. They thanked me for my cooperation. They told me I had done the right thing by keeping records. Then one of them said something quietly. "You might want to file a formal complaint." I asked what he meant. He said false reports can have consequences. They left. I stood there in silence long after the door closed. Across the street, Linda had already gone back inside her house. No clipboard, no smile. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. But it didn't last. The next morning, I received an email from the HOA board. Subject line, urgent board review. It said the board would be conducting an internal review of my account. No apology, no explanation, just process. Later that day, a neighbor stopped me again. This time, they looked embarrassed. "I saw the police yesterday," they said. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize." They didn't finish the sentence. Word travels fast. The following days were tense. The HOA went quiet. No emails, no notices. Linda stopped walking the neighborhood. I thought maybe it was over. I was wrong. A week later, I received a copy of the HOA's internal ledger. The first real one I'd ever seen. As I scanned it, my heart started racing. There it was, clear as day. My payments had been recorded. Every single one. But right below them, someone else's dues were missing. Not just late, missing entirely. And the amounts matched almost exactly what they had accused me of owing. I stared at the name attached to those missing payments. It took me a second to process it. That hit me. Linda. Her account showed months of unpaid dues. Hidden, reassigned, buried under adjustments. Suddenly, everything made sense. The pressure, the urgency, the threats. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was covering herself. And now, the truth was sitting right in front of me. I realized something else too. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was fraud, and the board was about to find out. The moment I saw the ledger, I felt like I'd been holding my breath for weeks. The numbers didn't just suggest something was wrong. They proved it. The missing payments weren't an accident. They were deliberate, and they were hidden in plain sight. I sat at my dining table staring at the spreadsheet for a long time. The more I looked, the more it felt like a betrayal. Not just of me, of the entire community. I had always believed HOAs were about keeping things orderly, not about covering up personal mistakes. But the more I thought about Linda, the more her behavior made sense. She wasn't a friendly neighbor. She was someone who wanted control, and she found a way to use the HOA as a weapon. I didn't know what to do next. I could confront her directly, but that felt dangerous. She had already shown she wasn't afraid to push things too far. The safer move was to go to the board. Officially, formally, I drafted an email that took me an hour to write. I didn't want it to sound emotional. I didn't want it to sound like a complaint. I wanted it to sound like a fact. I attached screenshots of the ledger. I attached my bank statements. I attached my timeline. I wrote, "There appears to be a discrepancy in the ledger. I request a full audit of the HOA accounts. I also request that this be handled by an independent party." I hit send. Then I waited. The next day, I received a reply. Not from Linda, from the HOA president. His email was short. He said they would review the matter internally. That sounded promising, but it also sounded like they were trying to delay. That's what I worried about. I replied, asking for a timeline. He didn't answer. That silence worried me more than anything. 2 days later, I got a call from the HOA management company. A woman named Angela. She sounded polite, but tired. She said she had been assigned to handle the audit. She asked if I could meet with her at the community center. I agreed. When I arrived, she was waiting with a folder. She told me she had reviewed the ledger. She said she noticed unusual adjustments. Then she asked me something that made my stomach drop. "Do you know if any board member has had financial issues recently?" she asked. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to accuse anyone, but I also knew she wasn't asking casually. She was fishing. She was looking for confirmation. I told her I didn't know. She nodded. Then she said something that made me realize she was taking this seriously. "Because these adjustments don't look like standard bookkeeping errors," she said. She paused. "Someone is hiding payments." She said it like she didn't want to believe it. I felt a wave of relief. Not because I was happy, but because I realized I wasn't alone. Someone else was now seeing what I had seen. Over the next week, the audit began. The HOA management company started requesting documents. Old bank statements, payment confirmations, invoices. It felt like a second job, but I didn't mind. I wanted the truth. One evening, I got a call from Angela again. She sounded nervous. "I found something," she said quietly. "What?" I asked. She paused. "Linda's account shows multiple missed payments," she said, "but she has been listed as paid in the ledger." I felt my hands go cold. "So she covered it?" I asked. Angela didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "It appears she created adjustments to make it look like she was paid." That sentence hit me harder than I expected, because it meant Linda wasn't just lying. She was manipulating records. That's fraud. That's illegal. That's not a small HOA issue. That's a crime. I felt anger rising, not just at Linda, at the system, at the board for letting her get away with it, at the management company for not catching it sooner. I asked Angela what would happen next. She said the board would meet, and they would decide whether to take action. Then she said something that surprised me. "We're going to need you to be present," she said. I asked why. She said they wanted to confront Linda in a meeting. My stomach dropped. I didn't want a confrontation, but I knew it was necessary. The board had to see the evidence, and Linda had to face it. The day of the board meeting arrived. The room was filled with the usual people. A few neighbors, the board members. Linda, she sat at the center, her expression calm, like she belonged there. Angela began presenting the findings. She showed the ledger discrepancies. She showed the adjustments. She showed the missing payments. Linda didn't react at first. Then Angela showed a series of emails. Emails from Linda to the board, requesting adjustments and corrections. She had been asking for her own payments to be removed. It was clear. The board members looked shocked. Then Linda spoke. She denied everything. She said it was a misunderstanding. She said the adjustments were legitimate. She said she had been helped by the management company. She tried to shift blame, but her voice was shaky. She was no longer confident. She was cornered. Then the HOA president spoke. He asked her directly if she had made adjustments to her account. Linda hesitated. Her eyes darted around the room. Then she said, "I didn't realize it was wrong." That sentence was the moment everything collapsed, because it didn't make sense. If she didn't know it was wrong, why had she requested the adjustments? Why had she insisted her account was paid? Why had she pushed so hard to punish me? The board members began arguing quietly. Some said she should be removed. Some said she should be reported. Some said it was too late to undo the damage. I sat there silently, listening, watching, my heart pounding. I realized the neighborhood wasn't just watching me anymore. They were watching her. They were seeing her true side. When a meeting ended, I felt both exhausted and relieved. The truth was out, but the aftermath was just beginning. That night, I sat in my living room and thought about what had happened. The fear, the stress, the humiliation. I thought about the fact that my life had been disrupted for weeks, all because one person decided to use her position to cover her mistakes. I thought about how easily people can be targeted when they are quiet. I thought about how important it is to keep records, and how important it is to speak up. The next morning, I received an email from the HOA management company. It said the board had voted to remove Linda from her position. It also said they would be pursuing legal action. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but I also felt a strange emptiness, because I realized something. The damage had already been done. My reputation had been affected. My peace had been stolen. And even though justice was coming, I knew it wouldn't fully erase the pain. Still, I felt grateful. Grateful that the truth had finally been seen. Grateful that I had kept records. Grateful that I hadn't backed down. And as the days passed, the neighborhood began to change again. People started talking to me again. They apologized. They admitted they had believed the rumor. They said they didn't know what was happening. I accepted their apologies. But I didn't forget. I didn't forget how quickly a story can spread, how easily a person can be made into a villain, and how dangerous it is when someone uses power to hide their mistakes. After the board meeting, things started to feel like they were finally moving in the right direction. But it didn't feel like relief. It felt like aftershock. You know when a storm passes? The sky clears, but the air still feels heavy. That's what it felt like. The neighborhood began to act normal again. People smiled. Neighbors waved. But I could feel the tension under the surface. The truth was out. But the story had already been told. And stories have a way of sticking. The first real change came when the HOA management company sent a formal letter. It confirmed that Linda had been removed from the board. It also confirmed that an audit was completed. And it confirmed that there was enough evidence to pursue legal action. That sentence made me feel something I didn't expect. Not happiness. Not relief. Just tired. Because I realized this was not going to end quickly. Legal action takes time. It takes money. It takes emotional energy. But I also realized something else. The fact that they were taking legal action meant the HOA was finally admitting something. They were admitting the problem wasn't me. It was her. And that was a big deal. But the next week was strange. The HOA board suddenly became very quiet. No more notices. No more emails. No more meetings. It felt like the neighborhood was holding its breath. I started getting messages from neighbors. Not apologies. Not sympathy. Just questions. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you feel safe? I appreciated it. But also made me realize how much this had affected me. Before all this, I would never have imagined needing to ask for safety. I would never have imagined that a board member could make me feel unsafe in my own home. That was the most unsettling part. One day, I got a call from the HOA president. He said he wanted to meet. I agreed. We met at the community center again. He looked tired. His eyes were red. He apologized. Not in a formal way. In a human way. He said he had been proud of the HOA. He said he believed they were doing the right thing. He said he had trusted Linda. He said he was sorry. I told him I appreciated the apology. But I told him something else too. I don't think you realize how much damage was done, I said. He nodded slowly. I know, he said quietly. I know. He asked me if I wanted to make a formal statement to the community. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to relive it, but another part of me knew it was important. So I agreed. A week later, there was a community meeting. People gathered. It felt like a small courtroom. I stood up and spoke. I told the truth. I didn't try to dramatize it. I didn't try to sound like a hero. I just told what happened, how the accusation started, how the letters came, how I had proof, how the police were called, how the audit showed the truth. I told them how it felt to be targeted, how it felt to be treated like a criminal. I told them how easy it was to ruin someone's reputation. People listened. Some looked ashamed. Some looked relieved. A few looked angry. But when I finished, something shifted. The room felt different, like the truth had finally landed. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to me. They apologized again. One woman said, I didn't realize it was so serious. Another man said, "I just assumed you were being difficult." A younger neighbor said, "I didn't want to get involved." I told him it was okay, but I also told him something important. "Don't assume," I said. "Ask questions. Don't believe rumors." I didn't say it to lecture them. I said it because I knew what it felt like to be the rumor. The next part of the story is what I think most people don't understand. Even after the truth is out, the fear doesn't disappear. It takes time. It takes consistency. I still felt wary. I still watched my back. I still checked my mailbox. I still felt a little anxious whenever a car slowed down in front of my house. I didn't know if that was normal after what happened, or if it was something that would never go away. But I did notice something else too. I started feeling stronger. Not in a dramatic way, just in a quiet way. Like I had been through something and survived. Like I had learned something. I had learned that power can be used to hurt, but it can also be challenged. I had learned that people can be brave in quiet ways. I had learned that documentation matters. And I had learned that speaking up matters. A few weeks later, I received a letter from the HOA management company. It said the legal process was starting. They were pursuing recovery of unpaid dues from Linda. They were also pursuing reimbursement for legal costs. The letter ended with a statement that felt strange to read. It said the HOA would be implementing new transparency rules, new guidelines, new checks and balances. It said the community would now have access to financial reports monthly, not annually, monthly. That felt like a small victory, but it also felt like something that should have been there all along. A week after that, I saw Linda again. She was in her driveway. She looked different, not angry, not confident, just quiet. Her car was parked outside. Her lawn looked neglected. I don't know why, but I felt a strange sense of pity, not because I felt sorry for her, but because I realized how far she had fallen. She had used power to hide her mistakes, and now she was paying for it. I didn't approach her. I didn't say anything. I just drove past. The feeling in my chest was strange. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't revenge. It was relief. It was closure. And it was also sadness. Because I realized something. This could happen to anyone. Someone could decide to target you. And if they have power, it can be terrifying. That's why I wanted to share this story. Not because I wanted attention, but because I wanted people to understand what it feels like. What it feels like to be accused. What it feels like to be watched. What it feels like to be treated like a problem. And what it feels like when the truth finally comes out. The final weeks were quieter. The HOA started holding open meetings. People were more involved, more aware, more careful. I began to feel the neighborhood return to normal. But I also began to feel something else. A new sense of confidence. I stopped hiding in my own home. I started walking outside again without feeling watched. I started saying hello to neighbors without thinking twice. I started feeling like I belonged again. And that's the thing. The story didn't end with the truth. The story ended with me finding my peace again. I didn't get the weeks back. I didn't get the stress back. But I did get something more valuable. I got my life back. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling. It isn't fighting. It's simply standing your ground, keeping your records, speaking your truth, and letting the truth do the rest.